So friends, due to high demand, I have brought you the explanation of the film The Woman in the Yard, which was recently released. This movie has received both negative and positive reviews. In other words, it has received mixed reviews. As for the theories within this movie and whatever the film wants to show or convey, I have explained all of that quite well in the ending. So watch the video till the end and then decide whether the movie is good or not. Apart from that, the movie has been directed by Jam Khaled Serra. Currently, this movie has an IMDb rating of 5.6 stars out of 10. And recently I explained the film Shadow of God, which is similar to Exorcism of God. In case you missed it, go check it out, you'll enjoy watching it. You'll find its link below in the description and pinned comment. So now, without any further delay, let's head straight to the video. The movie begins with a video clip of David. In it, he's very happy and excitedly shares that he had a dream where their house is finally completed. The decoration is all done, the barn is filled with animals, and the yard is planted with Ramona's favorite flowers. In the garden, their children Taylor and Annie are playing, and Ramona is extremely happy with them. He just hasn't been able to think of a name for the house yet. To this, Ramona says it's okay, not all farmhouses have names, and the two of them start joking and laughing together. Now, it was Ramona who was watching this clip. She used to watch it on repeat every day, trying to ease her sorrow behind the happiness of what had passed. Because what actually happened was that after this, David died in a car accident, and in that same accident, she also lost one of her legs. Anyway, now inside this house live Ramona, her two children, and their pet dog Charlie, and ever since that tragedy, she has become strict and somewhat disconnected. That is, she is not able to pay enough attention to her children. Anyway, early in the morning, Taylor comes to wake his mother and tells her that there is no electricity at home, so she should call the electricity office. Anyway, she gets out of bed and looks at her daughter Annie, who was telling a story to her toy penguin. Meanwhile, Taylor was preparing breakfast and gives Charlie his food. But since it was finished, he gives him the regular food that they eat. Now he starts making breakfast, but the gas wasn't working, so he tries to use matches. But those were finished too. So he goes up to the attic and brings down David's lighter and cup. That is, you must have noticed how much trouble Ramona was in here. She didn't feel like doing anything at all. Anyway, after a while, Ramona comes to have breakfast. There she sees a letter, which lists a lot of debts she has to pay off. At the same time, their financial situation wasn't good either. And that's because she still hasn't been able to truly and completely get over her profound and overwhelming grief, which continues to deeply affect her every day. Along with her laughter, she was about to burst into tears, which she somehow manages to control. Now Taylor tells her to call the electricity office again, but her phone was dead, and by now her pet dog had also vomited. So she asks Taylor to tie Charlie outside, who hadn't even finished his breakfast yet. Now she goes to her room and sits down, where she starts having visions of that incident. When suddenly, Taylor comes in and tells her that there's a woman sitting in their yard. She looks outside and sees that right in the middle of the yard, there is a lady sitting, covered from head to toe in black clothing. She too is sitting on a chair. Ramona now comes into the hall where both the children are also present, and they all talk a little among themselves. Who is this lady? To this, Ramona says that she might be lost or something like that, and since her face was also covered, maybe she did it to protect herself from the sun. Now, Ramona thinks for a moment and then goes to talk to that lady. But instead, the lady asks her how she ended up here. To this, Ramona replies that only she would know that. Now the lady in turn asks her who she is. To this, she tells her name saying, "I am Ramona." Anyway, the lady then asks Ramona for her full name and says that she must be married because the wedding ring on her hand made it obvious. Ignoring this, Ramona asks her what she wants, to which the lady replies, "Nothing at all." Now this lady starts talking to Ramona in a rather cryptic manner, like what if she is the strongest of all, or what if one day she just disappears without a trace. And these kinds of remarks gradually started to bother Ramona. Now Ramona tells her to leave because her husband is about to arrive. To this, the lady replies that her husband won't be coming. His broken leg and the crash truck from the accident lying to the side. The whole story reveals that she was lucky, but her husband didn't survive. And the most shocking thing was, how did this lady even know about it in the first place? Anyway, this really disturbs Ramona, and she tells the lady to leave. But the lady says, "Today is the day," meaning that the day has finally come. She says that it was Ramona who called her, and now she has arrived. And as she says this, her voice suddenly becomes very distorted. Now she shows Ramona her hand, which is covered in blood, and by this point, Ramona is extremely disturbed. Because of this, she goes to the shed, and that's when we see the mutilated chickens inside her barn. Anyway, she also tries to charge her phone using her Jeep, but the Jeep won't start either. As a result, she can't charge her phone, which makes Ramona even more anxious. At this point, things are getting really weird here. Meanwhile, Charlie keeps barking at that lady, who makes some kind of gesture with her hand. After that, Charlie gets scared and goes quiet. Now Ramona comes back home and, without telling the kids anything, tries to distract them. There was blood on his hand. Now Trailer says that she should take out her father's gun, but she says she won't do that. At this, Trailer says he'll go get the gun, but just then, Ramona gets angry and in a fit of rage, sends Trailer to his room after breaking something belonging to David. After a while, Annie says that the lady has come closer, and everyone sees that she is now sitting even nearer to the house. No one knows when she walked over and brought her chair here, because no one ever took their eyes off her. Anyway, now Ramona ignores the lady and starts taking care of her children. Just then, she looks at her wound, where the stitches seem to be coming undone, and she starts to pull at them, but snaps out of it when Annie calls her. She sees that the stitching is actually perfectly fine, and realizes that she was just imagining all of it. Anyway, she goes outside to get Charlie, but he isn't there, and the chain he was tied with is found sunk into the ground. Here, Taylor wakes up from the vision of that lady and notices that Ramona has come in from outside, but she doesn't tell him anything about Charlie. Now he says that they should use the jeep to go to the neighbor's farm for help, to which she replies that she can't drive like that. So he says he'll go himself, but she refuses to let him go as well. He says that he'll go on foot, but she forbids that as well and starts getting angry at him, which makes Taylor a bit upset and he starts playing with his ball. She tries to stop him, but he still doesn't listen. Now because of this, Ramona starts getting very angry and, in her anger, looks at the knife she has nearby. Frustrated, she snatches Taylor's ball and notices that Annie is unable to write the alphabet anymore, so she gets angry at her too. Annie feels bad about this, so she hugs Ramona and says sorry, but in the very next moment, Ramona stabs her. When she comes to her senses, she realizes that it wasn't Annie in her lap but a pillow that she had stabbed. This means that if Annie had actually been there, Ramona would have stabbed her too. So here we can understand that Ramona's mental state was not at all stable. Meanwhile, Annie is outside and hurts her foot on a broken cup, so she brings it in for a bandage. Now here Annie says that this was just an accident, just like what happened with her father, who crashed the car and died in it. She then asks Ramona if she will still stay in this house, to which Ramona replies that she doesn't know. Meanwhile, the trailer goes outside and tries to sneak into the garage, hiding from the lady, but she spots him. He tries to start the jeep so he can go to the neighborhood and ask for help, but it won't start. He then sees the lady who had suddenly disappeared from her chair, and now she comes here to hold him back. He sees her shadow outside the garage and follows it, and he's about to attack her. But it turns out it was actually his mother, Ramona, who gets angry and takes him back home while the lady was still sitting in her seat. Anyway, Taylor comes home and starts getting angry that Ramona isn't telling him anything. He says she knows that lady, and Charlie is also missing, who is actually dead, something Ramona knows but doesn't want to tell anyone. But here the scene is that she tries to stop him, and in the middle of their conversation, he calls him crazy, which makes Ramona very angry with her son. Anyway, in his anger, he goes to get David's gun, locks Ramona inside a room, takes the gun outside, points it at the lady and tells her to get off his property. He was just about to count to 10. But just then the lady stands up from her chair, comes up to him and shows him her face. She says that she knows Taylor doesn't even know how to use a gun. Now she tells Taylor that his father David never used to take him hunting. At the same time, with just a gesture of a hand, even the direction of the wind changes, and while standing there, she comes a little closer to him. Anyway, now Ramona calls her daughter Annie and asks her for help to open the door. As a result, Annie agrees to her request. Now here, we see the shadow of that lady growing even larger, and she tells Taylor that Ramona has lied to everyone. Everything she has said until now has been completely false. Anyway, feeling troubled, he goes to Ramona, sends Annie to the living room, and asks Ramona what really happened that night. That's when she finally reveals the whole truth. And friends, this is where the real secrets of the movie are unveiled. She explains that she and David had gone out for dinner. David was quite happy, but she wasn't happy about staying inside the farmhouse. She didn't like leaving the city, and she absolutely did not like coming here. She argues with him about this and insists on going back. As a result, she was the one driving herself. Yes, and we even get to see this in a flashback. Anyway, just then, she sees that same lady who was just in her yard standing on the road in the car's rearview mirror. In fact, after that, she even sees the same lady inside the car. Because of this, their car crashes, and the biggest lie she told was that David was driving that night, when in reality, she was the one driving. This is the reason she doesn't want to drive here, because she has developed a deep fear inside her. She was consumed by guilt, and that's why she was so disconnected from the world that she couldn't pay attention to her children, because she had suffered such a huge shock such a deep trauma, that she truly believed her husband died because of her, which, in my opinion, was actually true. Anyway, now we see Annie, where inside the house, the shadow of that lady starts to stir, even though she was sitting quietly outside. That shadow was about to hurt Annie when Taylor and Ramona save her, and Taylor starts closing all the curtains. Anyway, they run and go up to the attic, and wherever the sunlight was coming in, that shadow was trying to haunt them, trying to hurt them. To the point that, with the light coming into the attic, the shadow grabs Annie and starts pulling her. However, Taylor, with quick thinking, manages to effectively cover the window, a crucial move that ultimately saves Annie from immediate danger. Following this narrow escape, they begin to meticulously hide themselves, moving cautiously from one concealed spot to another within the dimly lit surroundings. It is during this tense period of evasion that, quite suddenly and unexpectedly, the eerie and unsettling shadow of that mysterious lady materializes on a nearby chair. As they instinctively react by flashing their light directly onto the spectral apparition, it instantaneously and mysteriously vanishes into thin air, leaving them bewildered and on edge. This is the same thing with which Annie had disappeared. Taylor and Ramona are very upset, and since they can still hear Annie's voice, they go downstairs to look for her. Ramona finds a path through a mirror. From there, she ends up back inside her own room. But this was a different world, one in which David was still alive. She becomes emotional and wants to stay here. But then she realizes that all the words are written backwards. This means that it's either a mirror or parallel world, or perhaps just her imagination, and she still has to save Annie. Just then, David suddenly covers her face and starts to choke her, and here, this was her guilt that was killing her from within. Anyway, now she finds herself on that same chair in place of the lady, and just like at the beginning when she came to talk to the lady, here too she sees herself coming in. And this second Ramona says, "Today is the day," and then she leaves from there and finds herself in the attic. We had seen the lady going to Annie, but in reality, it was Ramona herself, and now, she brings herself back to consciousness. Annie was lying in her lap. Anyway, she sends Annie outside with Taylor, and now the lady comes to her and tells her that she has arrived. Because Ramona used to call her by saying, "I need power every day, I need power," and this lady is none other than Ramona's own inner self. Yes, in reality, this is her own trauma, a dark past because of which she was sinking into guilt and falling into depression. She goes on to explain that she doesn't ask for strength because she wants to live after David, but rather she asks for strength because now, in her depression, she wants to end herself. That's why she used to ask for strength so she could end her own life, and today that day has come. Ramona tells her that she has children who need their mother. To this, the lady, that is, her inner self, tells her that her children have needed their mother for weeks, but Ramona was never available for them. Now, she shows her a glimpse of her children's future, saying that if she sets them free today, they will be much happier and live better lives going forward. Now, Ramona starts thinking about how badly she has treated her children because of her depression. She realizes she never took any responsibility for them. As a result, she finally agrees with what the lady says. And then, after saying goodbye to her children for the last time, she sends them to another farm to get help. Anyway, she goes up to the attic where the lady hands her a gun which she was preparing herself, and then the lady possesses her. And this is the reality, that people who end their own lives don't actually want to die. But their pain and their mind convince them otherwise, and their inner depression and all these things force them to end their own lives. In other words, the lady here was nothing else. That is, the lady in the backyard was nothing but Ramona's own depression, a dark past, or something within herself that had been eating away at her for a long time. Anyway, now Ramona was about to end her own life. However, at that precise moment, just as the quiet settled, the lively and energetic children who had been away playing unexpectedly made their joyful return, filling the space with their laughter and the sound of their footsteps, bringing an end to the momentary stillness that had enveloped the area. Ramona must have tied that up somewhere as well. Anyway, the power comes back on, and we see a painting made by Ramona inside the house. In it, she had painted herself and that lady, who actually represented her own depression, and below it we see her name, which was actually written upside down. This means that this isn't reality, and perhaps in reality, Ramona has ended her own life. It's possible that the return of the children and all these things were just her imagination, but in reality, she might have already ended her life. Or it could also be that this is the truth, and boom. With that, the Woman in the Yard film ends here. So friends, this was the story of the Woman in the Yard film. I hope you like this film. Look, this movie is a kind of social horror message type of film. In it, the film tries to show us what kinds of things go on inside people who deal with depression, anxiety, or past trauma. People like this become disconnected from real life. They are unable to focus on their children, husband, or family. They have troubling thoughts in their minds, because of which they need some hope. But here, Ramona was not able to find that hope. She wanted to take care of her children, but she just couldn't do it. Basically, she was unable to overcome her own sorrow, and the woman sitting in the yard was actually a reflection of her own pain and trauma. Now, if we talk about the ending, it is ambiguous. So if you are a positive person and you want that if someone around you is depressed, they shouldn't do such things and should quickly return to their reality, then you might think that Ramona really did come back to her children. Now she is ready to become a real mother. She is ready to take on her responsibilities. Obviously, she can't completely forget the sorrow, but she can lessen it and reconnect with reality. But if you interpret the ending negatively, you might understand that Ramona was not alive. She was just imagining all of this. After it ended, she thought this is how it should happen, but it couldn't actually happen. If you notice in reality, there was never actually any lady inside the yard. The children here were always just looking at their mother's reflection, that is, at her negative and dark side. And this is confirmed when Ramona enters an illusionary world or a parallel universe where she sees herself coming just like this lady, and she herself says, "Today is the day." And you might also be wondering, if that's the case, then why did she see that lady during the car accident? So this was nothing but her manifestation, or you could indirectly call it death, which appeared to her before the car accident happened. So I hope that now you have understood the explanation of this film and all its aspects clearly. If you've understood everything, then please like the video, and if you still have any doubts, you can ask in the comment section. I'll reply as soon as possible.